So welcome to part 3 of this most amazing exchange that I'm having with TR Anand, also known as TRA. And in this part, we're going to be talking a little more, because in the break between this, we realized that there is so much more that TRA has on the entrepreneurship bit. We're going to talk a little about that. And then how that ties in with what he is most committed to and passionate about, which is education, especially in rural areas, and how we can ensure that the value systems, the ethics, the principles are inculcated in people right at that stage. So, TRA, you were in the break. Incidentally, if you want good coffee, please come home.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure.
You were mentioning about your stint with Satyam.
Satyam, yes.
Some exceptional anecdotes that you were mentioning, right? I'd like you to actually share that with viewers and listeners. And you reeled off some numbers as though they were like, some vegetables ka prices, and you said, $500 million. I did not have to take approval. I got a $1.2 billion order, and this is in the early 2000s. It's not like today, right?
Right.
So you mentioned that in the context of, the ownership and the empowerment that you received in organizations. And the reason I'm talking about it, TRA, is relevant today with the number of startups that we have in India especially. Leaders, I work with quite a few of them, and you work with them as well. They're struggling to see how they can get the right people in, which is also something that you spoke about. How do we inspire them, and how do we, in a certain sense, I'm using a very strong word here, liberate them to be the best that they can be in some form or shape? When you spoke about your PSI stint and when you said, I put my money in, it turned out that it was your own investment in terms of what you were working on, not the money I'm talking about, but how you invested you were in achieving something. So the empowerment bit, I'd like you to share those anecdotes and how you felt and what advice, inputs you have for entrepreneurs of today, intrapreneurs of today. What did you do that inspired that confidence in the business manager, so to say?
Yeah.
Both ways. So please, okay. I'd like you to speak about that. Then we'll come back to education and your what I think you are really passionate about.
Okay, good. So I think these are, I did speak a little bit about the stint at IBM, and I was doing quite well there in that sense. But a chance meeting with, I spent about 7 years at IBM, and also it did not help that I did not have this was an IBM consulting group. We had a slightly unreasonable boss, I would say, who was the practice head in India at that point of time, and a bit of an autocratic, as well as the tremendous arrogance in that sense, as perceived by almost everybody. Arrogance which went with a lot of knowledge, but the arrogance overshadowed the knowledge. I think that's one thing that one sees a lot now, but I think if you have knowledge and the knowledge is recognized by others as something that is doing external good, would be help. So there are a lot of incidents there, but I don't want to talk about it. I think the most important thing is a chance meeting with Ramalinga Raju and Satyam. I think most people have heard of the Satyam crash, and they don't have a very good opinion of the company in that sense. But it was an Indian company, the 4th largest built, and tremendous. And this is 1999, before the internet bust. I went to Hyderabad and saw Ramalinga Raju and his vision. The vision was really grand. In 1999, there was a 125-acre software technology park estate in Hyderabad, which he had built, and beautiful buildings. It had an 8-hole golf course. So once you have golf course, you have everything else, right? In that sense. And a lot of vision to be able to build the software business and go global in that sense, with a lot of investment that was made. And he said we have to grow Bangalore too. So, and Bangalore at that time was really small, about 150 people, 200 people, doing about $2 million worth of software, but a lot more ambitious. And Bangalore was seen as the tech capital even then. So all the technology related stuff, because of the companies that were here, which started with Texas Instruments, and then all the other companies came in here. So it was seen as the tech capital. Hyderabad was still not as big as Bangalore. That happened afterwards, during Naidu's time, and then Rajshekhar Reddy continued what Naidu did. So, but Hyderabad, being where it is and being a lot of more entrepreneurial city in terms of business, the folks from Andhra who are in Hyderabad are real entrepreneurs in that sense. Not the Hyderabad, Telangana entrepreneurs, even today, in that sense. So, 1999, I met him and he said, you leave and you build Bangalore, and I was offered the position of Bangalore SBU head, SBU 3 it was called at that time, Strategic Business Unit. So, I said, okay, let me take a jump. And at that point of time, I think I felt reasonably confident, and I wanted to, you always have some business goals which you want to accomplish a lot more, and I wanted to do global. And the opportunity to go global in a larger company like IBM will be limited by what the division and the division head and somebody else makes the decisions. Here, it was very clear, it was almost like a white slate, clean sheet approach. And therefore, the team was really very good. We had a very good mentor, and I should mention Kalyan Rao here, who was the chairperson of Bangalore. I knew him from my PSI days, brilliant guy, IIT Kanpur, IISc, and he was really a mentor and achieving the impossible kind of stuff, and very much hands-on. He would write code himself in that sense. So he was a mentor, but of course very tough master. So he was the mentor and the chairperson. I was the business unit head. But if you take then what we did at that point of time was to start building a unit which focused on technology and value addition. And first we decided we are not going to do any on-site, which is body shopping. So that means everything that we do will be done offshore and value add here. So that was the first major decision that we did. Whereas a lot of the people took the easy way out and sent people, to earn money. And I'm talking about the early 2000s. Second is we focused on projects around technology and adopting the right technology and providing business solutions. I think the business focus was very important, and we focused on specific businesses which we were able to compete. Third is we choose our niche. For example, to cut a long story short, Cisco was our biggest customer. And here is the definition of a strategic partner. We were a strategic partner of Cisco. I won't say the word, I was a strategic partner, my strategic partner is Cisco, because what is a strategic partner is important. If you are either number one or number two, and the company relies on you as a partner, contributing to revenue and contributing to their value addition, then you are a strategic partner. So one of the philosophies that we had in the business unit here was either be number one or number two or get out, in that sense. So don't be a third or fourth partner and have a list of names saying these are all our customers. Third is invest ahead of time in order to deliver value. So if you want to work with any of these people, you need to be able to build things yourself first and be able to demonstrate that you can add value. So that's one of the things that we did. And you have to struggle really hard. I remember we did not have any customer in the valley, in Silicon Valley. By the time I quit and finished, Silicon Valley was delivering $250 million of annual revenue, right? Including companies, 33 Fortune 500 customers we had at that time. Okay, so that's how it was built over a period of 1 decade. But to acquire the first customer, you have to invest a lot. And in order to invest a lot, you have to put in a lot of hard work, which even startups do today. So we used to go and spend a lot of time with customers, and that's where my stint with travel started, in that sense. I used to be on travel regularly, and be in front of the customer, work with our teams.
Million miler on...
Yeah, when I quit, I had about 950,000 points on Lufthansa, miles and more.
And you also said that you've visited, 40 countries?
Yeah, I think We had customers in about 40 countries, plus across Asia Pacific, Europe. We didn't have customers in South America and Antarctica.
So you really don't mind the creamer in this coffee?
Yeah, I'm used to all kinds of coffee and stuff like that. But it also helped me to get used to a lot of wine and cheese. Okay. I'll talk to you about how to acquire customers and doing a 9-course wine tasting dinner in the best French restaurant in New York or San Francisco.
I think
that's
that
how you
would be
treat
very
customers.
interesting. That is very interesting. I
Yeah,
think
so-
it works even today.
Yeah, it works, and it works all right. But and you need to. That's how you take care of customers. But the sad part of it is they used to have, and we used to have, what do you call a sommelier, right? Describe each wine and the food that goes with it, and obviously most food is non-veg. And I used to be sitting here eating my potato slices, serving those, because I was a vegetarian. And you can imagine after that many glasses of wine. Okay, but I still love wine. I never drank anything other than beer sometimes and wine, but mostly wine, right? So that's another story. So coming back to
Satyam.
your question, Satyam, entrepreneurship. Fortunately, I think one of the major advantages and empowerment was Satyam management fully empowered the business leaders. I have not seen that level of empowerment anywhere. I worked with many organizations. They fully empowered you as long as you set your targets. There are some guidelines, but once you set your targets and you're meeting the goals, that's it. Review is one hour a month, and after that you go and do your business.
What would a 1 hour review?
1 hour review would typically be, so we had what we would call as a strategic business CFO. CCFO is called Circle Chief Financial Officer. So he reports to me first and then second to the CFO. Okay. So in a sense, that person is your business support. We call as what is called as a business support. So very similarly, that you asked what a 1 hour review would be. It would typically have, and I'm trying to recollect because it would typically, you would present the business results in terms of targets, actuals, where you are, what are the surpluses, etc. This is revenue, which is billing. Then there is sales, booking. So you need to have a pipeline and sales. So how does your bookings look like? So that's the second part. Third is what is your funnel, which is your funnel. Fourth is this is all on the customer side. CSAT scores. Obviously, you continuously get 4. Fifth is what are the things that you have done in terms of marketing and branding, analysts and others in terms of the activities and promotion. So all the usual stuff that you do, and then investments that go on. People related, absolutely. Turnover, all that was not much of an issue for us. For us, a lot more would depend upon what kind of people we have hired, what are their what are their competencies, what adjacent competencies have we got, how did we invest in architecture, how did we invest in research. These all mattered a lot. And these were decisions that we could make locally. We would have targets for both revenue and profit. Well, we always made our revenue. We rarely made our profits. The reason is our investments were very large. So because of that, the incentives that we were getting, we couldn't make our full incentives for the entire team. And that was a conscious decision that we would do, that we will go after revenue and we will continue to invest. Because we invest, the invest-harvest cycle was working very well. So when we invest ahead of time, and then go talk to the customer, and we have to know their business better than them. Only then can you be a partner in revenue.
You mentioned something about this when you were mentioning Cisco in the break.
Yeah. For example, we built up with Cisco quite a bit in terms of, and when I mentioned that, Wipro and Infosys were already with Cisco on the engineering side. So we said no point in going after engineering, but Cisco is a business organization. So we became their IT partner. In fact, we became their largest IT partner across the world. And one such rollout that we did for them covered their worldwide rollout at that point of time called Oracle 6.0 or 7.0. We had 300 plus people rolling this out across their entire organization worldwide. And this was possible because of the extended team we had. So that's the next thing that I will talk about. This is not, you can't just work with core team. You have to work with extended teams. and the extended teams are the competencies that you get in order to deliver any solution. Everything cannot be resident with you. Either you have to have partners within the organization whom you recognize, whom you give them reward, etc. So coming back to incentives. So we never made our incentives, but that did not really hurt our people in that sense. Okay. Second thing that we did, and sales guys always work on incentives, a lot of the sales guys. Okay. And quite often, even if a sales guy has done very well, for some unfortunate reason, he doesn't make up in a particular order, etc. So we had a concept of pooling part of the sales incentives, so that it is not that the one-star salesman makes all the this one. And this pooling did not happen at the sales level. It started from the business unit head onwards. So we used to share the incentives and be able to make it. And if a particular sales guy or a group did not make it, we made sure that they got their recognition so that everybody felt good. So I think that's a part of the exercise. The other part, so empowerment was very good in terms of making bills,
So
etc.
the empowerment bit.
Yeah. So you could make your own
No,
decisions.
you were making the empowerment for your team.
Yeah.
My question.
But I was also empowered by the managing director.
My question is twofold.
Yeah.
What were the qualities that you demonstrated
Yes.
that you could take the empowerment,
Yes.
right? If I can use the entrepreneur, you empowered yourself, so to say. There's no
Yeah.
word like that, but
Yeah.
you took the empowerment. There must have been something that you did
Yes.
that inspired that confidence to empower you.
Yes.
What was that about you?
Okay.
And this is specifically for people who are now entrepreneurs, because I come across a lot of people who aren't very happy with the level of empowerment. They say that, everything I have to go and ask questions. It has to be approved by somebody else. So it is a certain irritation that it brings up.
Yes.
Right? And I'm not restricting this just to companies. In families, this happens.
Yes.
Right? That I'm not able to take decisions. I have to go and ask somebody else. What are the qualities that you demonstrated
Yes.
that made it possible for people to empower you? One.
Yes.
And as the person empowering all those with you, what were the qualities that you had that you demonstrated that was possible to empower them?
Okay. Right.
Because the second part for me is relevant more in the family setup than it is in the corporate setup. Because I think, going back to what you said in part one, which is families, parents, they inculcate in us a certain set of values. So one of the things I've consciously done, I've told my children, is take a call. What's the worst that will happen? To go wrong. There's no way you can learn without making mistakes. It is a mistake only if you make the same thing again. If you make it only once, it's learning. Make it second time, it's a mistake. Yes. Find new ones to make. So come back to the question. What was it that you demonstrated that you were empowered? What was it that you looked for in people that you would empower them? And what were qualities that you demonstrated that you were able to empower them?
Okay. All right. I'll try to compartmentalize, but it might get mixed up a little bit. I think the key thing was to be able to set goals at the beginning of the year. In any corporate, you will need to have annual goals, right? Which are in alignment with the corporate goals, and also how you want to grow, because we were all in a growth story at that point of time in that sense. So I think the key thing is to be able to set achievable goals, which are what I would call challenging also in that sense.
Stretch.
So for example, stretch goals. When I started, we were 6% of the company's revenue. When I quit, we were 25% of the company's revenue. Okay. So we were continuously growing faster than the rest of the company in that sense. So one of the things is to be able to set stretch but achievable goals. In order to do that, it has to be a fairly in-depth planned exercise. So in order to do planning, you need to be able to have all the key members who are required to do. So what we do today, we used to have upwards, from project manager upwards, everybody. And in initial stages, I still remember, we used to do a program, which I had then we and we came up. When I use I, sometimes it is actually we in that sense. I mean, I always use the word we, but we need to, since we are talking one-to-one, but it's always a we. We had a formal planning exercise to demonstrate and make all these happen and we had a program called Accelerate. Accelerate came from the word excellence and accelerate. Okay, so you have to accelerate the business and excel in whatever we do. And this Accelerate was an annual. We used to do that in February because the year starts from April onwards. Set our goals. This used to be attended by all our own business unit times. Plus, we had what we would call as complementary. We were called verticals because we were market facing. Then there was something called horizontal, which are competencies, treated as market facing units, which are getting the business, and competencies, which are delivering the business. Oracle, SAP, business intelligence, engineering services. These were all the competencies. We would get all of those leaders as a part of our exercise of building, because what can we deliver? What are the new solutions? And this used to be a fairly exercise of taking people all across and including all our folks from across the world. When we started, it was small, 20, 25, 30 people. The last big one that we had in 2008 was in Agra with 450 people from across the world, just doing our Accelerate in that sense, okay? Which essentially meant these people, because by then we were thousands of people, right? So we would include all of them into the planning exercise. Second, give them equal recognition. They are not being treated as somebody who will deliver as a service. They are providing leadership. And being able to give, I used to call at that point of time what is called rotational leadership. In the sense, the leader, though we are customer facing, our people need not be the boss or the program manager. Whoever was the most competent to lead, even if it was from another business unit, was made the program manager. So that way, that demonstrates that you make the best leader, provide the leadership for that duration that is required. Second, this is from a way of constituting teams and so on. Second, recruitment and getting people. Obviously, it used to be through a process of selection where people sit. I mean, after you do all the variety of things, we used to have a senior leadership team. The senior leadership team will sit and meet the person, not necessarily for competency, but for teamwork and the ability to have a cultural fit. I think that is most important. So we are looking for a lot of stuff. And primarily, we were looking for passion, execution, what are the priorities in life, flexibility, and our value systems that are there, ethical businesses. And I think that's going to be very important. We'll talk about ethics in a little while subsequently, and where things go wrong, where things go right in a little bit. But I think we primarily, because it was value-based, we would do that. The second, and this is really as you go across, obviously you need to be very strict and disciplined in terms of achieving, because you only have 90-day goals. Every quarter you have to meet your goals, which essentially meant you have to meet quarterly because the company...
My question is this. Yeah. Why quarterly goals?
Quarterly goals because the company has analyst meet, no? So you got results to be published. It's a public limited company. So public limited company publishes quarterly.
Why are the analysts looking at it 90-day cycles?
So 90-day cycle is because the next quarter's results are going to be published, no? So every quarter you publish results. And you publish results and then have analyst calls, right? So you need to be able to meet the numbers. So all the numbers added up from each of the business divisions adds up to the company's number, and then they do.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You said we made the revenue targets always, but never
the profit targets.
Profit targets, because we were investing for the future. You also used a very interesting invest-harvest cycle was going on.
Yes.
You mentioned that. So my question is this, and this is you can call it a peeve, whatever you want it, rant sometimes. Is this quarterly analyst business call, and that is driven entirely by the stock market or the projections? In many cases that I've seen, my experience is very limited though, that because of this 90-day cycle, people are managing only for the 90 days, but they are really not looking at the long term. But what you said was very interesting. We were always making the investment. We were not making the profits. We were always making the revenue targets.
Correct.
So this to me seems to be like a paradox of being at cross purposes. How would it? So,
Okay.
because the
So I'll
analyst.
explain why it is not a paradox. It's
Okay.
actually, so if we were making our profits, it essentially meant, what is profit? So you've got revenue minus cost of goods, which is really people. So typically you will do that and you will get a gross margin. And after gross margin comes your SG&A, sales, general administration expenses, then depreciation, investments, etc. So if you are not making any investments, so what are the investments in a services company? These are investments if you hire a lot of talented people who are not billable. There's something called billability is to be in them. That means, are you a person earning revenue or are you an investment into making the revenue happen? So we had a lot of people who were part of an architecture group, who were part of a research group, who were part of the marketing communications group, who are not directly connected with the revenue. But these are the investments to create, communicate, and be effectively in terms of earning the revenue subsequently, right? So we used to make a lot of investments and not make our profit margin because we had to make a certain amount of numbers. We said, no, I don't think it is that important because if I don't invest today, I will not be able to get my next segment or my next business. So we were always looking ahead in technology, looking ahead in what comes next in terms of the work. And how do we do it? And these are all fairly long cycles in terms of what we do in that sense. So we need to be able to invest quite a bit in any business, even if you're doing something today. Unless you do that and you have the foresight on where it is going, you will not be able to sustain and grow. Second is, disruptions were not happening that frequently. Now it's happening even more frequently. So you have to be at the right side of disruptions, technology-led disruptions that are happening today. So I think that's important. But let me finish the first question, which is I talked about leadership, people, selection, fitting the company, our group culture in that sense. To a certain extent, the disadvantage was every business unit of Satyam, which was in a different city, had a different culture because it was based upon the leadership. On hindsight, I realized that this was part of a larger plan. I can say that today probably in terms of keeping this total empowerment, and that led to the problem subsequently.
Which is going to be my question.
We'll come to that later. That we realized later in hindsight, right? So what happened? So this was there. Second thing that we used to do is transparency. We had a weekly call every week, Monday, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. irrespective of which part of the world you are in. 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. IST. This is the management group call within my team. And it used to be run with an agenda, which essentially said, what did we decide on last time? Has that been executed? What do we need to do today? And what decisions do you need in that sense? Okay. What decisions do you need? What support do you need? We used to say, because everybody cannot implement on their own. So what support do you need and how do we make it happen? And then once a decision is made, you go ahead and run with your business because you can't do. The only principle that I followed was what I called no surprises management, essentially. That means if you have a problem and a delivery is not going to happen, don't come the previous day or the previous week and say it's not going to happen. You know it 1 month earlier. Let's face it up front and see how to manage because then you have to be transparent and honest, not within your group and within to the customer also. So the customer will appreciate because anyway you will have a bomb exploding later, right? So I think transparent, no surprises and transparency in management. Second is making things, once they are empowered and they make a decision, you back up the decision, right or wrong in that sense. So I think that is one thing. Third is praise in public and give suggestions in private. That's the other third one. So don't, rebuke anybody in a meeting. That's the worst thing that you can do.
I love the fact that you use suggestions in private.
Yeah, so improvement
even,
suggestions.
The normal terminology people say is praise in public, criticize in.
I don't think we
So
want to criticize.
I love the fact that you said.
So because how will you develop the person otherwise in that sense, right? You are where you are because you can develop leaders. If you cannot be a business unit head if you are not capable of developing leaders who can replace you. That is the fourth principle. I could walk away from a job and 3 people in my department could have taken my role.
In the break, you said something very interesting. I'm bringing your attention back to it.
Okay.
You said, I hired a lot of people and I paid them more salary than I got myself as the SBU head.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I find that very, very interesting. I'm going to give you two things. One of the things that I keep telling my clients, especially startup entrepreneurs, CEOs, I say you should be willing to, one, hire people who are smarter than you,
Yes.
who are going to challenge you. And second, if they need to be paid more than you as the chief executive officer, so be it, pay them. Because that is the one thing that's going to add value to you being the CEO in the first place.
Yes, absolutely.
And in most startups today, the CEO has a financial stake. It's not a professional CEO. So there is already a vested interest in getting the right people in and even paying them more salary, right? You said that, how did this work for you? Because in that role, you were not the owner of the business.
Yes.
And you still did that.
But lot of us, all of us as leaders thought that we were the guys who were building the business, and we related to the business a lot more.
So it was not financial
it was
stake,
not financially,
but
we
a
were together.
spiritual stake.
Yeah, not spiritual. It's also the fact that we wanted to be globally the best, So there were, for us, competition from India was always IBM, was always TCS or Infosys, most often. All of us could do the job, and I'll come to that principle a little later. In the world, it was either IBM or EDS. That's it. The rest of the guys weren't even in the same league in that sense in terms of competing. So it used to be finally there. The question is, why did we win some and lose some, or win more and lose less? Is the question we always thought, and I always tell people, when you are with competition who are as good as you, there's no difference. Everybody can do the job. Everybody can get selected. So look for areas where the customer, because he is compulsorily has to eliminate one or two. So find out which areas you can get eliminated on. So not your strengths, but your weaknesses. That's one of the key things that we focused on. That means with this, can I get eliminated? So how do I make up for this? And which makes me a lesser elimination probability than my competitor. So that is one of the key things that you have to look for when you have to win the business in that sense. Apart from all the other things that you have to do, because in any competitive situation, even today, the top 2 or 3 guys can all do the job. They're all equally qualified. They're all equally competent, well led. Everything is same. But naturally, only one person gets the purchase order, right, or the PO. So you need to work on that. What is the other question that you had? I forgot right now.
The empowerment. How did you empower people?
So you were talking about hiring, etc. Because we are very clear that we are hiring for skills, and especially if you are doing things like business transformation, you need people with an ability to do transformation. With those specific skills where they understand. They bring the expertise. The second major thing was domain. See, you cannot just be a technologist. You have to be a domain-enabled person. So you have to bring the respective domain experts into the field. If you're in media entertainment, you have to get a guy who's worked in the media entertainment, not in IT, and just because he's written code for media entertainment. I'm just using a crude example. But I think you needed to hire people for their ability to add value and complement what you are. And that every one of us understood in that sense, right? And obviously, you will also have to demonstrate that you can deliver. The other thing is in sales. Sales is not easily quantifiable, but a lot of people are successful in client relationships. I use the word client and not sales person, because client relationship goes beyond what you do. And client relationship, people are great client. IBM, for example, in the olden days, had great client relationship managers. They were able to relate to the client a lot better. They were able to represent the company well. They were able to understand and identify what clicks and what doesn't. They were able to ask for an order. They would not oversell, because sometimes you can kill an order with oversell. Okay, all these things matter.
So a very interesting thought that comes up right now, TRA.
Yeah.
Satyam imploded.
Yes, so that we haven't come to that.
IBM is not the force it used to be.
Absolutely.
At one point of time, it used to be no one got fired for hiring, buying
an IBM computer.
Right? But today, that's not the case. Right? What do you think is the reason this happened? Because I think this links, in my mind, to the ethics values that you were speaking about, that it was entirely based on ethics, values, principles. And if it was really based on ethics, values, and principles, Satyam wouldn't have imploded.
Yes, I think
IBM wouldn't have been, it is still a large company, but it is not the kind of force it used to be.
IBM missed the bus in innovation. So it's a different story. I worked in both companies, right?
Yeah, which is why I'm asking.
IBM, I was there during Lou Gerstner's days when elephants could dance.
Yes.
Right? So that scenario. Yes. So Lou Gerstner's days, it was great because I think IBM had made the right choices at that point of time, had what you would call mainframes with ES range. They had something called an AS400 computer. People didn't hear, but AS400 Silver Lake used to be great in that sense. Then they had an RS6000, which was a RISC machine, which was very good. And then they had personal PS2, PS1, etc., personal systems. But where IBM missed the base, where they missed the entire software revolution. IBM's OS, for example, OS2, used to run on what, 16 kilobytes? And OS2, you could not make it crash. Whereas Windows, which came in, every 1 hour it would crash, right? Or 1.5 hours you can make it crash. But IBM never positioned OS2 properly in that sense, right? This is a great operating system. But to answer your question, after this, it all depends upon how leadership and succession happened. They moved to services, IBM Global Services, and Sam Palmisano became, and it was great during Sam Palmisano's days because he understood services. He was head of the IBM Consulting Group and then services. But when services grew, the question then was, would you continue to provide services along with your platforms, or do you want to remain a services company? They were neither this nor that kind of scenario. And the entire PC revolution, as it happened with Lenovo, Lenovo was a great laptop, but it got sold to the Chinese company and they sold the brand and then became. So they were not able to keep up with the innovation that is happening in this entire space. Second is the entire technological revolution was happening at too fast a pace. This is my reading in terms of IBM, and companies need to be nimble enough. So they were not nimble enough in the marketplace, and many other folks took over the market in terms of the responses. There was, with a unique proposition, Dell, for example, came. Dell had their market proposition was reliable workhorse computers which you can assemble yourself at very competitive cost. That's Dell. Michael Dell for you. And then he built several billions, tens of billions of dollars of companies. Even now Dell runs.
Yes.
Okay. So each one, HP had its own scenario. HP went through its own storyline anyway, in that sense. So different. So IBM, I think, did not innovate fast enough and also identify which segments they wanted to be in. So that was one part of it. Satyam, the problem was we were all empowered and we were working very well and growing. But there is this personal, I think, ego and wanting to be known very well in that sense. And here is where it's okay now, 10, 15 years have passed by, since 15 years now, 2009, right? So I think we were doing all well. And what we didn't realize at that time was that each business unit, and we had 4 or 5, to simplify matters, about 4 business units, we were never reviewed together. We were all reviewed separately, and A plus B plus C plus D equal to Satyam's revenue was what it was, right? And while we were responsible for customers, while we were responsible for, we were not responsible for the finance. I never signed a check in my life, which probably saved me also. I was not a signatory, okay? So I never spent any money in that sense, though we were able to earn money. Second is the revenues or the purchase orders are paid by customers. They were all paid into a central account in the headquarters. So all the money what is coming in was being seen by only the CFO, and that's where the fraud happened. So I won't go into it detail. So we were not there.
It's in the public domain. So
public domain. But at the same time, I must say, along with this empowerment, Ramalinga Raju had great vision in that sense. So we started the 108 service as EMRI, Emergency Management Research Institute, which saved up to 30,000 lives per day at its peak in that sense. That's a great initiative in terms of doing things, and it was very forward-looking. But our business unit built the technology platform for it in that sense, in terms of what it delivers and with a call center and so on. So I think scenario is if you lose sight of and if your ambition overtakes your growth, We were growing quite nicely, but I think we were fourth in the list. And I can mention this now. I think the marketing guys used to make charts, okay? And I think in one of the charts that they put up to the management, in one quarter, it became fifth and Cognizant became fourth. So immediately the management said, Cognizant is not an Indian company. It's headquartered in New Jersey. So we are still fourth. That tells you that you want to maintain a position or status for the sake of being status, not necessarily. And that is what led to riding the tiger philosophy. Okay, so if you think that what is right and wrong. So if maintaining your growth and an image is more important than doing ethical business, then I think it's going to be tough. You win, lose some. Somebody else is growing bigger than you. You can grow, so why should you worry about it? You still are great in terms of what we want. You had great customers, great appreciation. Customers spoke well with us, and things like that. So I think that was a bit of a problem that happened. Anyway, I think we will transition at this point of time.
Beautifully into all of this learning, into this education. Because I think the oft-repeated statement is those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
So this brings me into all of this learning, absolutely lovely learning. Today, most people might not even be aware of all of this that you've shared today. And I'm hopeful that the younger set of entrepreneurs and people who are going to become entrepreneurs in the next 5-10 years take heed. They learn from all of this. How do you think, and what are your thoughts in terms of the education initiative that you are focused on? I absolutely love the fact that it is for underprivileged people, and that one tagline, which is the first graduate in each of these families, so to say, right? What made you come up with that? What was the spark for that?
Okay, so that's where I started out as a trustee. It was not founded by me.
Okay.
It was founded much earlier by another gentleman with great social objective. But I think I want to go back a little into education.
Yeah.
And 2009, when Satyam collapsed, I'd already done everything that I wanted to do. Several of my co-presidents were there as the presidents of the company, went on to join HCLs and various other, whatever companies they wanted to join in that sense. But I decided that at that point of time, and here is where the work-life balance also comes in, I'd hardly spent any time. I was 52 years old, and at the peak of my career. I'd also spent a lot of time doing building businesses, etc. I could have easily got another CEO's job elsewhere, given the track record that had been established. But I also realized that is this what I want to do for the rest of my life, another 13 years, 65 or 68 when you retire? Because it means more of the same, The millions will become tens of millions, the 10 million will become 1 billion, 1 billion will become 10 billion. I could have easily been a $10 billion CEO, but what else? It gives you a lot of headaches, a lot of blood pressure faster, etc., and see very little of family, because you have to do justice to your goals. So I think here is where I think for the viewers, you have to make a decision on stage of life goals. Okay, in the first 20 years of your career, you are making stage of life goals where you want to earn financial security. You want to have enough money for a house, enough money for your children to study in the best of schools or colleges worldwide, etc. You want to be able to achieve, and there is a certain craving for status and recognition, want to get into the top clubs that you have, want to be seen in society, look for awards and honors in industry associations, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of stuff will happen in that sense. But I think all this is really, you start to begin, at least at that point of time, is this really what I want to do? And of course, if you haven't had a good family and work or balance, that is when if you hear them, your family say, and especially I think you have to, in a family where husband and wife, both me and my wife were professionals, if you are professional and both are equally competent, if one has sacrificed the career for the other, because both cannot grow equally, the children will definitely suffer in that sense. So somebody spent more time with the kids, educating them, giving them the right values and all that, then I think it's time for you to balance. Second is if you have achieved a certain level and if that is not what your goal is, if your goal is to really continue to be in the same social corporate club circuit, then that is different. But if you want to do something where you say, I have internal satisfaction, in that sense that I've contributed something, and that is where I think your original beginnings of society starts to kick in that sense. In the sense, it tells you this is what you want to do. Second is you also want to do something that you want for yourself. All said and done, these are goals which are of the business entity or your group or team, but you want to have your own goals if you want to do. And I thought I would pick education as my next area because I saw education being transformed in that sense, professional education. And the area that I knew because of the working with hiring fresh graduates, etc., I thought that is the right area. And fortunate for me, I came across an educational institution of enough size, which was in the private industry. I mentioned that SRM University Group in Chennai. They wanted to become excellent. They were not in the top 3 or top 4 when I started out with them in 2000. So I said, I'll quit this and I'll spend 3 days a week with you. And the rest of the days I'll do what I want to do in terms of consulting. So that's when I moved from software to consulting. And the reason why consulting suited me was I had done my stint at IBM Consulting Group. So I had actually done strategy, operational excellence, etc. So the consulting thinking of, fact findings, conclusions, a formal mechanism did help in that sense. So I did some amount of consulting in order to continue to keep myself engaged, but I did a lot on education, primarily with SRM University Group. And there also again the structure held. How do you improve a university? First you start with faculty. That's the key thing. You have your infrastructure, labs, everything, but if faculty don't change, so you have to be able to do. Unfortunately, in the Indian system then and even today, we don't get the best of people entering professional education as faculty. Now people go abroad, they join IITs, they join corporate. If you don't do all those things, then you join another local non-IIT engineering college as a prof in that sense, right? So unfortunately, that's the reality. So if you don't get the best of people and attract, so the first thing is you have to pay well, you have to recognize, give them the labs, etc. So I started an SRM Research Institute here in Bangalore because I had my team. One of the things that I had is we had a 40-member team here. I said, I told SRM I'll transfer the entire team into an SRM Research Institute because anyway, the company that acquired us had no use for them, And that's another story anyway. I don't want to get into it. They're a big company now. Yeah. But this is the other transition that you have to make. And I started the SRM Research Institute and then started to look at improving the various areas, marketing, communication, faculty. So I did a fair amount. They also took up a lot of suggestions and really the college came up. I also did a certain amount of planning for their 2 new universities, which are the SRM Sikkim and then the SRM AP Research University, which is really doing very well in Amravati. And that's the second time I had a chance to interact with Naidu. Okay, the first time was during the Satyam days. I was very, very focused. Probably the only CEO of a state, CEO of a state as you call it. He was the first one to institutionalize the in-government, the accountability, etc. Anyway, that's a digression. So education, I started that activity and worked also with a couple of other universities in advisory. Because of the background, I used to get involved in because I'd done the selection of all the professors, directors, up to the vice chancellors even of universities. So that's a different kind of activity. But that helped me to be able to take. But SRM was still a very big institution and education was changing a lot. And you needed to bring in competency and skills based, what the industry wants in that sense. And that cannot be done unless you change the education system. And you want to be able to get to a system which allows students to learn by doing. Actually, the slogan that my friend Chancellor has said is learning to learn is what you want. Learning to learn is what drives curiosity, what drives ability to work in teams, and if the content is interdisciplinary. So we said you have to be interdisciplinary because the word is interdisciplinary. So this is one part. But I still had 3 days a week, right, in education. And that's where my Thai stuff started. I became a charter member in Thai in 2007 in the Valley. Okay? Because I knew at some point in time that I had to work with startups and young mind. The notion then was working with youngsters in a disruptive society keeps me young in the mind. And I have to compulsorily learn. And at some point I'll talk about student for life, which I think I am. And what does student for life mean? Anyway, I'll take a pause here. But I haven't answered your Swada. I'll come to that Swada Foundation. That's more focused on more outreach. I didn't start with Swada to be honest, I think it started only around 2018 or so when I realized that doing all this for professionals in cities and well-to-do people is all right in these big universities, but that's not really going to transform. And then I came across this gentleman who started Swada Foundation. And then he asked me also whether you want to be a trustee or will you contribute as a trustee. So I said, I'll be an active trustee. So I'm pretty active in that area. So that's what I do.
Where are you not active? Anything that you're involved in, you're active. That is something I know,
so
which is something that people need to learn as well.
Yeah.
That anything that we are doing, let us be doing it with full, complete focus and attention. Be purposeful.
Yes, I think you have to be very committed because if you want to get satisfaction at the end of the day that you have contributed and you have contributed to the success, you have to be involved in that sense. Second is you have to be meticulous in what you do and appreciate that rework. In fact, I always tell people, and where this rework principle that you have to be meticulous started? It started at TCS. That's what I said.
Yeah.
During those days, you used to get only one compilation a day. You write code, you submit it on punch cards, right? When people don't know what punch cards are, right? So you put the cards in, your compilation will come out next day. You get only one compilation. First compilation to get the first error, second compilation has to be error-free. That's it, finished. So that's how you get to zero defect.
Absolutely.
Today's guys, you can write code, you can write any number of times. Here, what we call code rework, not today, even 15 years ago.
It's like film cameras and digital cameras.
Film camera and digital camera. I remember we used to take film, you have 36 exposures, 400 ASA or 100 ASA. You have to decide what you want to take. And the best part is when you go out, you don't know what is next. Correct. You brought only 2 rolls with you. And you can't expose too many rolls because printing costs money. Yeah?
Correct.
A 6x4 is what I could afford.
Correct.
And people don't appreciate. So then you have to be very selective. So all these things of not being available. In fact, I tell people today, there's a little bit of a digression. When the internet was not there, you only had limited choices and you have to make careful choices. Today, with the internet, you can make carefree choices. It doesn't matter, And in the second thing, which is again for growing folks, etc., you have to prevent, as it says, child safe, etc. We never had words like child safe because you didn't know what did not exist. Today, everything is available. Everybody knows what did not, and you are trying to protect yourself from that. The same thing with cyber security, right? Yeah. In a sense, that's the biggest threat. And now the biggest threat, mother of all threats, is AI. Yeah. Right? Which is happening today.
Is it a bane or a boon? We don't know. The jury is still out.
I think it is going to be, if I go back, in the worst case, it will become like Yadavas and the destruction that happened with them in terms of what at the end of the previous era. Anyway, that's a different story. We'll come to that later.
Absolutely.
But I think it's going to be a responsible AI is the key thing today. I'm not saying you should not have had, but you're spoiled for choices, so you don't know what choices to make.
Yeah, too much choice is actually a pain.
Yeah, it's a pain today.
My question here is that, with all of this, I mentioned that my father had once said that from 2015 or so, it is India's time.
A little louder, please.
India will be a dominant force. That from 2010 onwards, India will be a dominant force, and by 2050, India will be a predominant force. I don't see that happening if we do not equip our youth with the right kind of knowledge. I'm using the word knowledge rather than education. Right kind of knowledge. More importantly, the right kind of values and ethics. You jocularly said that 3 Indians cannot stand in a straight line, which also means that there is a certain level of consideration for another, discipline, and not just looking at myself and what I want, which in the unhappiness slide is when I am not situated, I am not secure, I am extremely less confident about myself, I don't have a support system, and therefore I'm going into survival mode. I can understand from the neurological, psychological perspective, I can understand that over the last 250, 300 years in India especially, we've had a lot of lack rather than abundance. You also mentioned that there is this wealth creation that is happening, that there's a lot of wealth is being created. All of that, you also alluded that the wealth is getting accumulated, that the retail trader is not, retail investor is not making money. The big ones, the ones who take the long punts or so punts, I'm using the word punt intentionally, they are making more money, the hits and misses and all of that. So I'll come to the actual question now. All of this will completely depend, will hinge on the youth being able to have the right kind of knowledge, convert that into intelligence by using it, and be wise that we have responsible AI. If AI is going to be responsible, AI is going to be the important thing. This intelligence, whether it is artificial or human, to me, I don't think it is artificial intelligence. It is a copy of human intelligence processed faster. I don't think it is artificial. Human intelligence being programmed, it is just processed faster. It processes a lot more. So the hit or the miss will happen very quickly. Let me come back. Again, this is the third time I'm starting the question. How do we ensure that the youth in India and across the globe, they have the right knowledge, they have the ability to convert that knowledge into intelligence, and that intelligence is applied responsibly in which they become wise. So true wisdom in my mind. How do we bring that about? In India first, because that's where we are, and then across Vishwa Guru as we are called. How can we truly become a Vishwa Guru?
Yeah. So actually it's a very tough question in the situation that we are in today as a country in that sense. So I think addressing it at the country level, it's also a cultural transition that is required. I think the ancient Indian society, for all that existed, was a fairly harmonious, localized society. In the sense, I think, from what we hear of accounts and or whatever artifacts have survived, the ability to be able to coexist happily, and I'll still come back to the HappYness Helix, in whatever stage of life that you were in, or I won't go into the Varna system, etc., because there are strong views and in those areas. But I think every person had a profession, a life, and also the happiness and satisfaction that goes into their life. There was also an opportunity to grow. But I think somewhere along the line we lost that in that sense. Of course, the industrialization and colonization happened, and in a sense that unified the country, but it also unified the country in a different way. Inherently, we are culturally unique. I wouldn't say different. Every region has unique. And every region, primarily, if you go back, is the mindset receptive to be able to build all this good value system? I think it is there. We are probably as good as, if not the best, demographically as well as an ancient, rich in culture system to be able to adopt it. What has not been done today, due to a variety of reasons and the way the country has grown, has been that this has not been encouraged in a sense. To a large extent, the education has focused on the hard skills which are required for industrialization, which are required to, actually we did a lot of catch up of the industrial revolution to be able to bring basic capacity. Otherwise we were importing everything, right from food and PL for 80 days. People forget that we actually used to import food, and when people used to starve. Nobody has heard of starvation. We are surplus of food and we burn food because we are past the 20 or 30 million tons of storage that we have. Beyond that we can't store anymore, right? So I think in a sense that abundance has happened in terms, we are no longer, nobody talks of actually having a famine. So that stage is over. But in the process, what we have not emphasized in the education system, and this happens even in the next generation, if I consider my generation and the current next generation and then the children that are there today, this system of my good, my family, my community, and then my environment, to a large extent, it is still my-centric. I mean, the aspects around public good and the values that used to go with it have somehow not been ingrained. This is because we have also encouraged a very competitive nature. Competition for everything. Competition means I must get ahead first. It's also a culture of win-lose rather than win-win. Because you have intense competition and one person has to win, somebody has to lose in that sense. And this process of winning or coming first or second or third has really brought in a mindset of win any way you can. That's the second aspect of the process that has become difficult. Some processes are ethical, some processes are not so ethical today, but ignored in a sense. The system of democratization or democracy that we have today, and here is a little bit of where we are in the state, has encouraged you to a large extent polarization. So, and that has also contributed to this whole activity. If instead we had a system, maybe it would have been easier if we had a two-party system, I don't know, or a three-party system. We probably started that way, but I think just like land got divided among for future, the subsequent generations, I think political parties also kept getting splitting. So now we have a plethora of parties that are there, each with own ideology. But in a sense, they are all about the leader wants to become the next bigger leader. That's their simple principle in that sense. And looking for those. So in a sense, how do we get the education system back in that sense? This is actually a question of being able to build. It is not even an education system. So education is a lifelong. So how do you really educate all people in a community to be able to be considerate to others? All that it requires is a little bit of consideration. A lot of it will come with discipline. Unfortunately, we are not such a disciplined organization in that sense. The only discipline that was incidental as a window of opportunity was the software system, which essentially, I think our analytical mind, coupled with some of the processes, helped us in terms of being disciplined in order to meet some what we call world class in that sense. But rest of it, which requires discipline and teamwork in a very large scale, has largely escaped us in that sense. So I think that is something that has to be ingrained overall. And how do you get that is the big question.
I'm interrupting intentionally. We're talking about software and discipline. Recently, I was in an organization, a software organization. I was there to conduct a program with a couple of my colleagues, friends.
Okay.
And this is an organization where people are paid extremely well. Yeah. By no means, by no stretch of imagination are these people scrimping and scrounging. They are paid very, very, they are in the top 1% in India in terms of, and the group that we were working with is definitely in the top 0.5% of income earners in India. Even in that group, I am talking about a simple thing as going to the cafeteria for food. In this group, people don't adhere to simple things of standing in line, giving that amount of space.
Yes.
Personal space, right? So I think, while the software discipline that you're talking about might have been enforced, it was a question of survival, and therefore they needed to be disciplined in the creation of software. Otherwise, they would die.
Yes, I agree. I think
Right?
so.
I don't think that level of awareness even exists in many people. It's a very small minority of people that are even aware of their surroundings in terms of where am I? Am I stepping on somebody's in the road, in the metro? This is a pet peeve of mine. Can we not be a little more considerate? And I don't think it's about, this is the knowledge that I'm talking about, TRA. How do we get that in?
So it is actually culture, in a sense, and the environment and how you are able to discipline. It has to be, I'm not saying all 100% are like that, but a majority are this way. And I think there are enough examples which you say. So education is not, and it doesn't mean that if you have become successful in life and become managers, etc., and all that, whatever you say, you are educated. You're not you're educated in a sense to earn your livelihood, but you're not educated to live in society, decent society, with respect for the individual, with consideration for greater good, with personal space, personal hygiene, for example. I still know people, same kind of community, they'll stand in a line, they have their plate, they'll pick up one roti, look at it, put it back in the buffet, pick up the second one. I had to tell somebody like that, you're not being hygienic, Don't pick up you as much as you want, but pick up one and put it in your plate. And if you don't like it, put it in the waste paper basket. Even that is a waste. But they say, what is wrong with it? They don't think it is wrong to be able to handle food which somebody else has to eat. Simple considerations like that are not there. So we are not considerate enough to consider what is good for others. What is good for me is good. The rest of it, I don't care. That's the attitude. I don't care attitude. The second is parents. Do not inculcate this immediately. They do not tell their children that what behavior they're demonstrating is not correct. In a sense, you have to be considerate enough. And they just encourage leniency. Leniency is good provided it is within limits. But discipline and the ability to consider others is not there. So parents are themselves not there. So the next generation is like that. And they are all encouraged to get upfront, in the sense, be bold, become I have to be the first.
I absolutely pick up on this because I see parents on two-wheelers dropping their children off to school, and the children are not wearing a helmet themselves. Children aren't wearing a helmet, and the parent jumps signals, drives on the wrong side of the road, cuts across people, and all of that. So, it could be termed as a rant that I'm saying, but because you are speaking about education, I am therefore I'm not using the word education at all. Awareness and knowledge. How do we increase this?
I don't know whether me and you as an individual can make a difference to 1.4 billion people today in that sense. It has to come from, I would say, in today's world with social media and with the kind of hold it has on shaping values. I'm using a fairly strong word. I think social media is also shaping a lot of values, and leaders that have to demonstrate these as being good. Then only I think some effect may be there in that sense. But every education, it needs a complete overhaul of the system. You cannot do patchwork today.
I completely agree. I'm suddenly, as you were saying, and when you said whether you and I can, I'm reminded of an anecdote. There was this interview of the Dalai Lama by the Hard Talk, the BBC correspondent.
Yeah, Hard Talk guy, right?
And there was a question posed to the Dalai Lama. He said, "What do you think of global warming?" And I absolutely loved the answer that was given by the Dalai Lama. He had that twinkle in his eye, and he looked at the person and said, I know nothing about global warming. I don't know how to take care of it. But one thing I do is whenever I leave the room, I switch off the light. I close the door. If there is a tap that is open, I close the tap. I think if I do that, that's all I can do. If everybody does something like this, I think global warming might not exist. So I think when you ask me this question, this is something I keep saying, and incidentally, it was not Gandhi who said this, that be the change you wish in the world. It was actually said by another person in a different context. And they said, be the change you wish in your world. So I'm practicing that. And your point that, social media has this extreme power, either which way we can look at it. Hopefully, right now there are only hundreds or thousands of people who are watching this podcast. I'm hoping that it will grow and somebody will watch this and say, okay, there are these people, it's not a rant, they actually care. So let's do something about it. So I think, anyway, so I'll set that aside because I don't think,
I think
you and I can.
We have to try and extend the influence that we have and see that it can be done in each home. And if you are able to, if you have a receptive audience and if you are able to do this. So for example, I don't do this regularly, but my wife does. She's a pediatrician. She sees children, and when parents come, she tries to teach them good habits and what is good and how to distinguish between food and products. For example, anything that goes through comes from the farm is food. Anything that goes into a factory and comes out is product. Okay, in simple words. So have more food, less products. Simple in that sense.
Very interesting because it just triggers another anecdote for me. I do a lot of, I'm privileged to do some work with youngsters. And most of the youngsters that I work with, I've never met them. But I work with the parents and the children become all right. How did I start doing this? I met my coach, and I met my coach for a certain personal situation. And his response was for our children. He said, I don't need to meet your children. You and your wife come and meet me and please participate. He worked with us and our children became better. So I can absolutely understand what you're saying that, it is the parents, it is the people who are the role models, which goes back to what you started with, your life, right? So, your grandparents, your parents, your uncles, your granduncle, and the circle of friends that your parents had. It had a great influence, a positive, very directional influence in terms of shaping you to become who you are.
Yes, I think today there are more immense opportunities because your friends can be all worldwide. Earlier we were limited by distance. Now distance is not a limitation because of the internet and because of the tools and techniques that we have. And we might have teleportation very shortly, so you can actually be in any other place or your hologram can be there. But you can still have a very good set of friends in that set with like-minded. So I think choosing the right like-minded friends. Second is ability to communicate and use every opportunity to be able to demonstrate, I would say, in a very pleasant way is possible. The other thing is to work with communities. I think individual communities, if you can develop, and a lot of the people in the social spaces are doing that, and maybe this is the right time to just introduce the Swada Foundation where I am a trustee. And here we are trying to, basic word is provide an opportunity. That's what we are saying, because a lot of the, some basic statistics, less than 5% of rural children go beyond 12th standard, less than 2% of them graduate today. A whole lot of statistics which are very depressing in that sense. They don't have the opportunity, though they are bright. And so we are trying to create that in Swada. I'm not a founder. I joined very late as a trustee and with the founders. And we have a lot of IIT and IIM guys as board members. Now we are trying to change the way. And we provide opportunity You can read about Swada Foundation at the site, so I won't talk about what we do. But we basically provide the opportunity to pick up students at 11th standard from rural, bright children with economically. So we have a cutoff of 10,000 rupees a month family income. We verify that also, because this is another problem. We get about 3,000 applications. About 1,500 applications have deflated income. In the sense, they will have a television.
Their poverty.
They've increased their poverty to be eligible. So it has to reach the right people. But what we do is we also we check with unannounced visits, visit the neighbor's friend, find out whether they have a TV and motorcycle and all that. So, prosperity shows today. Right. So we verify that and then it cuts down. So anyway, I won't go into the process. But the idea is to be able to educate, enhance. So education part we take care through the normal system, and enhancement is where I think all these things we are working on. We work with people like me and we deliver a monthly master class. Okay. Second is, for every child there is a mentor, and that is the single largest one. So the mentor is a friend, philosopher, guide. We have over 260 mentors across the world. Mostly well-minded folks. And today, because of WhatsApp and other, they're all on a group, so the best practices are shared. The mentors really shape the value systems. And I'm very happy that many of these Swada graduates have started contributing back whatever they can as donations or their time to us. So I think, so if we can kind of get the right values to them through mentorship, through master classes, through specific programs on values, we try to emphasize values and systems and demonstrate the same when we do. For example, very simple things. Whenever we have a program or a function at the Swada, there are no dais, there is no, we just take wherever it is, either we stand or we pull up one chair and sit and finish the program. At the end of it, there is food that is served, usually, from a local catering agency. Everybody stands in the line, we tell the students and their parents to take food first, and then we stand in the line. So there is no special food for management kind of scenario. So all these will demonstrate the fact that we all belong in the same community, which is what we want to demonstrate to most of these people. And give them equal opportunities. It will develop them, and that gives a whole lot of satisfaction and happiness. It's very difficult for me to express that. So I think if this can multiply, if India has 100,000 villages, if you can do this in 100,000 villages, then I think this culture will spread. Now the question is, are all the major programs that are being run by the government, does it focus on these aspects, or does it just focus on the material things in life? That's the question.
Again, there are three things that I got from this. One is, I think we will get together again on a topic that I have a completely different opinion on. Views on the concept of education.
Okay.
So that I'll take a rain check and bring you in. I have one more person in mind where I will bring that person in, and we can have
not just tripartite conversation.
Tripartite, right, on the concept of knowledge, education, and what it constitutes. I'm told that once Swami Vivekananda has said that don't preach Vedanta to people who are starving. Today in India, on one hand, we have a surplus of food that we are not able to store and we are having to dispose it of. But at the same time, we also have a lot of people who don't have food. So that is a dichotomy that I'm not able to comprehend as to how that can exist to me.
Well, that happens because there is intermediation, or there are intermediaries. So the farmer really, the marginal farmer I'm talking about, not the rich farmers who don't pay taxes. I have a different view on that. People who don't deserve the subsidies are still continuing to get subsidies, which are entirely based on characteristics which were valid 75 years ago and have only been strengthened. They have not been weakened today. So I think the subsidies make the rich richer, and the poorer guy anyway doesn't get the subsidy, the marginal farmer with low. So we have to address it differently in that particular sense.
Isn't that the same in education also?
That's what we are trying to change in a sense, and a lot of people are doing that. And I must say that many people are trying to bring in this, bring the change in terms of education. And fortunately, a lot of NGOs working in this particular area, and bringing in digitalization has also helped in a way today. So content can easily be converted. You don't have to. There is a lot of content already, and I think it's made available in local languages, etc. That's happening.
Because I heard my classmate who was a guest on the podcast, Professor Chandramouli from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras.
Yes.
He actually introduced me to this NPTEL courses that...
NPTEL is there. NPTEL is great actually, modeled after Coursera and edX, which started out in Stanford and MIT. So NPTEL is doing a great job.
Yeah.
And it is recognized, so you can actually do NPTEL credits instead of credits here. More of, so the fundamentals are there, fundamentals have to be there, good, and it can be used. And I'll come back to this NPTEL in a little while on the Student for Life, and we'll probably wrap up there in a little while.
I think, it's I've over imposed on you and your kindness. I've, had you for the entire day and we've been recording. So there are two.
Did we complete that question that you mentioned in terms of how to get empowerment and how to get the education system?
I think
going?
That's a separate thing. I think I've parked it for now because I've got the answers that I want, but I think there is a lot more that we need to do in that area for us to be able to, probably one segment
we'll leave
only
that
on
and
that.
We'll come to individual journeys maybe in that sense.
Correct.
So I think I will want to leave with, if you're going to wrap up, tell me.
I have two questions that I want to. The first question is, you constantly, I've seen you stay ahead of or at least on the curve. You've never fallen behind the curve.
Yeah.
In the little I know of you,
Yes.
you've always been ahead of the curve or at least on the curve.
Yeah.
So most areas you're ahead of the curve, some areas you're on the curve. No areas I've seen you be behind the curve.
Yeah.
And that is something that I've also aspired to do so that to stay relevant, because I work with some exceptionally intelligent people, and to be able to hold my own with them, I need to be learning every day.
Correct. That's
So
right.
I hear you constantly make a reference to Learner for Life. I'd like you to give your thoughts on Learner for Life. After that, I have one question with which we will wrap up. I don't think I should keep you here because I might get a call from your home saying that, please let my husband go.
Okay. So I think student for life or learner for life, is both interchangeably used, is required. And one of the things to reinforce, I said, even in the era that I studied in, when disruption and change was happening once a decade or so, you had to constantly reinvent oneself every 3 years or so. If you don't do that, you're probably going to become irrelevant or fall behind on the curve. So how do you do that in terms of the being? So I think a few things I would like to highlight in terms of my learnings, if I have to summarize, in terms of how you can be a student for life. First is you have to have a passion for learning. That means you want to be able to learn, And the universe of knowledge and subjects is very large. But you need to be able to pick what you want to learn, which is relevant to you in that stage of life. So in the initial years, it used to be technology, etc., etc. Later years, you want to learn the finer aspects of arts, abstract, richness of life, etc. Later, you will get to a little bit more of spiritual, if you want to get to what is spirituality, not religion in that sense, and how does that impact present life, etc. So to recap again, you need to have a passion. You need to be able to have the context in which you want to learn and pick the right context for you. Third, start with a good foundation in it. And the best way to do that is, if you don't know something, start with the foundation and make sure that you understand what you are learning in terms of the student for life. And then whatever you pursue, complete it to a certain stage. You don't take up something and then leave it half-baked in that sense. I think but the last part is and I think this is the real, every interaction you have, every day, learn something. That is the most important thing. And you can learn from everybody. You can even learn from a child, because I think what a child does is unbiased, it is innovative, it is novel for the first time, and there is tremendous joy that comes from whatever the child learns. So if you have the same spirit of joy that you can do, then I think you will enjoy the learning process a lot better. So that is the first part of this answer. It is not enough to learn, because then you will become a recluse. So I've always practiced that what you learn, you must be able to give and share. Because if you share, you will get another perspective. And you can also, it will add to the learning.
Best way to learn is to teach.
Is to teach, of course. If you have to teach, you have to prepare, right? If you want to deliver a 1 hour lecture, you need to prepare at least 4 or 5 hours. Like today's, I think I put in a fair amount of at least ordering my thoughts preparation, which was required.
TRA, you are the only guest until now that has put in so much of work into this podcast.
Okay. But that's the way I do everything, in the sense. I mean, I've never changed in the last 50 years. So I was thinking, how do I quantify this? And how do I add value to everything? Today, if you ask me what I want to do, I continuously need to be doing. So I will post something here. And I think the index of learning that you have with all these characters has to be greater than the index of value creation. Okay, let me explain what that means.
Index of learning
has
to be greater than
the index of value creation, because you have to create value. In order to create value, you have to be ahead of what is it that you're creating value for, which domain, what is the context, etc. Therefore, you have to learn a lot more. A lot of the learning that you may never get used. You don't even know when it will get used.
The reason I'm smiling is the amount of preparation that you have done.
Yes.
I don't think we've touched 1/3 of that in all of the recording we have done today.
That's true. So you need to be able to do. And how does this value creation happen? So in a sense, if you think that you have to add value, then you have to do a lot of learning. And then based upon the context and others, you will appropriately deliver value, which is, so in the earlier days, I used to be fairly straightforward and blunt, and because you have to achieve a purpose. But today's value, and again, value creation is a context. So people will listen to you if you are continuously adding value. So there is a certain amount of content, but it's also something that you want to be pleasant today. Na bruyat satyam apriyam, equivalent, because it's better to be silent. Third is don't criticize, but what is the point in criticizing? Either it will be misconstrued, or this guy knows too much or something, and then he's saying something. Why is it? It is not relevant. Not necessary. If keep your views, if they are contrary to yourself. You can agree to disagree. There is no problem. Even in business, we do that. But we don't even have to express it today, I feel. In that sense, at my stage in life, in that sense.
I agree.
And therefore, continue in the present, be happy, and provide advice. Sometimes, most often, I now provide advice when asked. Earlier, I used to provide advice when unasked, so don't advise now too. So I think all these are different stages, but very clearly, people will, you will stay current, you will keep your mind active, you will live a longer life, and ultimately, people will value for your personality and what you do based on the value that you create. That's why I said, am I creating any value for, and this is not just external relations, even for at home,
absolutely,
with family, so in a sense, even if you want to, if you're not spent enough time at home earlier with your spouse or with your children, just being present is itself good enough to say I care kind of scenario, and then probably listen a lot more, which you may not have done earlier in that sense. So I think some of these things will help in leading a better, more fulfilling life. As you go on, and will take you higher in the elect.
By being a student for life.
By being a student for life. And learn what you think is relevant for you at that particular point of time. And that is helpful. When I say it to completion, you will say, look, I learned this. What is the gist of it? that appeals to me or that is relevant for me? And is it something that is practical? Is it something that I can share? Is it something that gives joy or happiness? Otherwise, it's okay. In that sense, change and take up something else. Irrespective of what it is, learning doesn't necessarily mean increase only the technical aspects of things. Learning can also be something which enhances. You can learn dancing, for example, if you want to learn at this point of time. If you want to pursue music, you can learn. So it is for self-satisfaction. I think we don't give enough, especially high achievers, don't spend enough time about themselves. It's all about external impact. I think internal impact, we probably need to spend a lot more ourselves. So be happy, spend time on yourself. I think that is probably the essence at this point of time.
The reason I'm smiling is two things come to mind. I heard this later. I used to always tell people that listen 90%, speak 5%. So they said, listen 90%, speak 5%. So I said, think for 5% of the time before you speak, whether it is actually useful for you to speak, otherwise shut up. And then I heard the Dalai Lama say it beautifully. He said, when I'm speaking, I'm only sharing what I already know. But if I keep my mouth shut and listen, there is a chance I might learn something. So then I also started telling people, the mouth multitasks. I can breathe, I can speak, I can drink, I can eat, I can do all kinds of things with this mouth and tongue and teeth. The ear, I can do only two things. One, the inner ear helps me in staying balanced.
Yes.
The other part of the ear is for me to listen. And I have two of them. I have only one mouth. So can I listen 8 times more than I'm speaking? So I think you beautifully said it by saying that, I can look at every interaction as a learning opportunity. I think that's a beautiful approach to life. Which brings me to one last question. And then before that, I'm taking a rain check that I will call you back in. So that is taken...
Maybe next year, yeah.
Whenever. What is one message that T.R. Anand what's the one most important message that T.R. Anand wants to get out to the world? And if this one message is understood, heard, and people they are inspired and they start practicing, it will make Anand feel, I've done something useful. What is that one message?
Yeah, I think the earliest in your life you decide that I will take responsibility for myself and my actions. I will inculcate, I mean, this is a process, but do inculcate what values and beliefs. We didn't cover values and beliefs in detail today, maybe another time, but what you practice every day and what guides you in your actions are values. Well, do inculcate good values and beliefs as you go along. Third is, be satisfied with what you have done is your best in terms of the outcome. And I think just like the Bhagavad Gita says, don't bother really about the outcome in that sense. If you think you have done what is right, karmanyavadhikaraste type, so then it's okay. And don't worry about the outcome if you do. Fourth is live in the present, live in the moment. At least in your later years, thank the Lord that whoever is the creator and this is your life and you lived every day in the moment and make it worth count in that sense. Count for yourself, count for your family. I know it's very difficult to do that. I have not practiced that earlier, but these days I do hope I am practicing that. And if you do that, a day will become a week will become a month becomes a year, and then it becomes a fulfilling life at the end of it. That's what I would say.
TRA, thank you very, 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 very much. And I appreciate you taking the entire day to do this with us.
Real pleasure talking to you, and sometimes it might be a little long conversation, but I did enjoy. It is also kind of, going back and thinking about a few things. I've never had that luxury of spending one day to think back about my life, but no regrets. I think I've done a good job.
I think I absolutely loved it. And I always, and this is something that is, except for the first 2 episodes which I did on my own, every other episode I've always concluded with saying, there is so much more to do. Why are we concluding it now? Right? I'm sure the team and maybe the viewers also felt that way about the first 2 episodes, which only had me. But I think it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for the time. And I will definitely call you back in. And one message to people who are watching, listening, ask them to subscribe, like the channel, and to share the word, please.
Yeah, I think, Cheenu, you're doing a great job by trying to catch the best moments and the best learnings of a variety of people. I think everyone is successful in life in their own way. It depends upon what you define as success. So I think there's goodness. Do watch. I know sometimes this might be long. You can reflect upon and try to relate it to the events in one's life. And also, hopefully, even if you pick up 1 or 2 threads which you want to be able to think upon and say, is this something that is useful for me? If you feel that out of all the discussions, at least a couple of them meant relevant to you, probably will shape a better, a happier, a more peaceful life for you, then we would have accomplished the goal of this podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.